Hello, everybody. Good morning, depending on where you are. If you're on the West Coast with me, it's still dark out. I like Michael, whose background looks like he's on the beach. That's beautiful. We have Giuseppe and Krystal. I almost said your name is French, Krystal. Over in the Palais Royal. There's lots of children out today. So we'll give everybody a little time to get in. But it looks nice and beautiful today. Here, it's so cold, of course. So I'll say this a couple times, but just as everybody's getting in, to make sure that you see Krystal's video, you want to make sure to tap on Krystal Kenney's image, and in the top right hand, there's a little blue bubble with 3 dots. Make sure you click on that and hit pin. That way you can make sure that the image stays on. You could still see her image instead of it bouncing back to me, since I'm the one chatting away. Hi, Jenny. Lots of friendly faces. Does everybody have the image hopefully on their screen now? They're locked in. You're ready to go. Give it another minute to get everybody, so everybody could get in. Last week we briefly, or a couple weeks ago, when we did some of the Christmas lights, we briefly walked by Palais Royal. The part that Giuseppe's showing you right now is the only part that actually remains from when it was the Palais Richelieu. And most of all of it has been rebuilt over time, but that part right there, that, and then to the left a little, is what actually still remains. So that is actually also where the Minister of Culture is. And if you go there on Patrimoine Days, which is, I've mentioned many times, my very favorite weekend of the year, you could go on this amazing tour inside this building that's normally closed off the rest of the year. It's really fantastic. They have quite a few different government offices actually in the building. So you kind of go through quite a few different ones. So I think we have almost everybody here. Let's see. Oh, Harry says if you're on an iPad or iPhone, if you double tap Krystal's image, it'll pin it too. So thanks for that wonderful little tip, Carrie. So we'll go ahead and get started. As we were saying, we're in this little area is very famous, of course, for the striped pillars. The Colonne de Bourrin, it actually has there's 260 of them in there. There's quite a few, of course, all different sizes. It used to just be the parking lot of the offices that were there. And in 1985, Jack Lang, who was the Minister of Culture at the time, probably was tired of looking out his window and seeing cars and wanted something a little bit nicer to look at. So he worked with Francois Mitterrand to do this at the time, of course, as with anything in Paris, going back to the Eiffel Tower. When it was first done, nobody liked it, of course. It also was very contemporary. And so people didn't like it very much at first, but of course they all kind of come around. It's white Carrara marble and black Pyrrhon marble that makes these up. The artist, Daniel Brand, was born in 1938, and he began basically in the 1960s in Paris as kind of a rogue street artist, and would go all around Paris and France and kind of do these installations and basic posters all over the place. So he kind of got onto some fame. He, way before Invader and everybody else, he was kind of all over Paris, and he worked on these. They actually asked him to do this with architect Patrick Bouchin, and so they created this. He is still alive, and there's all over the world he has done installations, and they're always these kind of black and white. I think we would call them awning stripes because they're so wide. but they're kind of all over the place. So, but you know, as you can see, people love to stand on them. The water, some of them have water underneath them, and they used to light them up from below, but they don't do that as much anymore. So, and then of course here in the Galerie d'Orléans, there's these other two installations of two groups of 17 spheres, and it's by a Belgian artist named Paul Bourry. And so they're different sizes. Normally water is flowing through them, and they actually kind of rotate a little bit. So I don't know if I've ever actually seen them actually rotate. So I don't know if I've ever seen them with the water. But they are pretty neat. It's always a good little place to sit. Also in here over against the opposite wall are some of the Arago markers that go through Paris that the Da Vinci Code, of course, made kind of famous. But those also, if you're walking out and you're going to Numar, hello children, you can see them actually in the ground. So at the end of Da Vinci Code, when Tom Hanks is running through the city, some of those ones that he runs over that they show those were for movie purposes, but because trust me, I've looked. But the Palais Road always, I discovered this, I think, on my very first trip, but it was like in the middle of my trip that I was there. And then it ended up becoming, because I was staying very close to it, it ended up becoming my kind of afternoon little spot. I just go and take a book and sit around the fountain and sit there. Of course, this goes back to Cardinal Richelieu, who had this built. He wanted to be closer to Louis XIII, who was just right across the way at the Louvre. And so he had it built. There was something that was there before. He had it partially destroyed and then built up. And then over time, it just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger. It was right on the edge of the defense wall of Charles V that ran through. There's quite a few different, there was 3 different major walls that ran through Paris. And this one, and not very far from here, is where Joan of Arc was actually injured as well, which we saw on another tour. But one of my very favorite things, if you catch it right now, the trees, they planted the trees that they planted. They laid this all out in 1910, and the original trees were replaced with red horse chestnut trees. There's over 500 trees. And if you look from the outside, they lined them up with every single column. So Paris just being perfectly Paris, of course. I love that they lined the trees up with the columns. So you see them as you go. Of course, you kind of have to stand in just the right way. But these, the two alleys where underneath the trees, the one we're walking under right now is the one that the 2 famous residents, of course, of the Palais Royal, Cocteau and Colette. This was the one, Cocteau actually lived on this side, and he would look out the window. Just about a year ago, they actually renamed these. And so at the very end, there's a sign and it's renamed for Cocteau, because he would look out his window and see all these wonderful trees. So it's nice they gave him a little mention. Of course, Colette too. But the Palais Royal, of course, you know, it went from being the palace of Richelieu, then it went to Louis XIII, which as a child he was there, or Louis XIV, I'm sorry. And so he, you know, it was much different then. But over time, it ended up becoming quite the place to be. It was filled with restaurants, and ladies of the night also mingle through here. It's basically, I don't know if you would say rumored or pretty true that Napoleon lost his virginity here at the Palais Royal. There's no plaque for it. There's no special marking, but it was the place to be, especially to the days leading up to the revolution, as there was restaurants here. It was kind of basically, we're going to see one of the passages, but this is basically kind of where the idea came from. You know, it was kind of the first place that there was, you know, a kind of what we would think is like a quote unquote mall, with all the different stores and restaurants that were here. People would gather and People would gather here, gather in the restaurant, plotting their revenge against the monarchy. Of course, now there's extremely fancy stores here. Some very the other side kind of has a lot of the really fancy stores, fancy shoe stores, and look at those delicious pastries. Can you guys grab us a few dozen of those? We're all in need. But the garden itself was designed by Andre Notre, who of course was the gardener of the king in a lot of ways. He was doing vol au vicomte when Louis XIV stole him away and threw Fouquet into prison. He also did the Tuileries. He did this garden. He was very, very French, very classical French in his design. But he was brought in to do this, to do the garden, which is so beautiful. Are those Christmas trees? I wonder if those Christmas trees are there for display or they're just waiting to be picked up. They
were displayed and now they're just waiting to get picked up.
They do leave them in pairs. Last year I was there into the beginning of February and they were still, everything was still up. So now we're going to come to this wonderful restaurant that is very, we could peek outside the window maybe. It's one of the oldest restaurants in Paris. It used to be the Café de Chart, of course. It's now Le Granve 4. Midnight in Paris fans will know this because they were there in the scene when she met her parents. But the Granve 4 dates back to 1760. There used to be the Pettipa 4 and on the opposite side of the Palais Royal. It wasn't doing so well. So then Mr. V4 took this one over and he opened this restaurant. It is, I went there on my very first trip. I went there because my grandmother gave me a wonderful little gift and I thought I wanted to use it on something special. This is not a restaurant to go if you're looking to pinch pennies in any way. My lunch for 2 people, I think with wine was close to 400 euros. But it was definitely one of the most memorable meals I've ever had in my life. It's extremely fancy. Right below where Giuseppe is, the chairs are actually, the banquettes in the restaurant have plaques on them of their famous people that used to dine there, Napoleon and Josephine. He lost his virginity here and then he proposed to his wife here. So he proposed to Josephine in the Granve 4. And there's a street there. Oh, hi, Giuseppe. And to the right of that, right where he was, when I went there, I was just dying to see what seat I was going to sit in and where were they going to put us. And we walked right in and they put me in Colette's seat, which I just about died because as we know, Colette wrote the books. Everybody, I'm sure, have them on their bedside table, the Claudine series. So to live right above it, we'll kind of walk under where she lived. She was one of the people that definitely came down. They would actually carry her in a chair when she was older and she couldn't really walk. They'd put her in a chair and literally carry her down into the restaurant and put her down. But there's many names. There's Hugo, Jean-Paul Sartre, Cocteau, all of those people. So it's really fun. It's one of those things like, maybe go have the jambon beurre for a week every day for lunch and save up. And it's pretty fantastic. It also is about a 3.5 hour experience just for lunch. So it's pretty fantastic. But Colette lived here for the end of her life. There's actually a plaque right there, right above you. For Colette. Oh, the passage, we can't get through this way. She actually lived right above here. She, with her third husband, World War II, who was Jewish, he would actually hide in the different restaurants and shops and in the attic at night to hide from the German officers. He wasn't so lucky one day. He did get arrested, but Colette used her influence with quite a few different people that adored her and was able to get him free, thankfully, but he still had to hide in the rafters as it was. And this one right here, this is the Palais Colette. So it's of course right outside her window. But I love the Palais Royal. Has everybody else been there? I'm sure everybody has been through. Look at how gorgeous that is. And that light today. Oh, wonderful job, Giuseppe. So gorgeous. But of course now, wouldn't it be amazing to stay in Palais Royal? It usually is pretty busy, but it is definitely less busier than walking just outside on the street. And now we're gonna head up. Just bonjour. Oh, don't you miss Paris and how people dress? So right up here, we're gonna hope we were going to set of those little steps. We'll probably have to go to the left. But right down the other side is one of my favorite restaurants in Paris, Willie's Wine Bar. It's been in Paris for over 40 years now. It's just right above Palais Royal. It is a fantastic place to eat. You get just amazing food. It won't cost you 400 euros. You could have a fantastic lunch with wine for about 30 euros and have like 3 courses. It's absolutely fantastic. But they've been there for 40 years and it was one of the very first wine bars in Paris. So definitely, I'll post in the Facebook in the event, all the little places we mentioned, but definitely go check it out when you are there next because it's absolutely great. I've always just gone there for lunch, especially after being in the Louvre all day to go, get a little refreshment of some wine. But it's a really great place. And of course, this is on the left is another one of those extremely picturesque Instagram locations, the Galerie Vivienne. The Bistro Vivienne is also really great. What's really great about that is their upstairs bathroom. Has anybody been in there, gone to the bathroom? It's like walking into like a pink feather boudoir. It's amazing. It has a little button that you can push for champagne, and it has these big, huge lamps that are like great big pink and ostrich feathers. It's absolutely fantastic. But the Galerie Vivienne, which is where we are right now, it's one of the 17 remaining passages that are left in Paris. There used to be more than 150 at a time. Most of them were on the right bank, and most of them were around the Palais Royal. When they put them in, it was a great way for people because there was no sidewalks or paving at the time, or many cobblestones until later, that people would get just really gross and dirty and muddy. So passages that were great, basically like shopping malls. So they always put them in areas that were profitable, where there was usually a theater close by because the theater would bring people. So they would create these passages with restaurants and bookstore. Oh, Chateau Latour. They would bring people. Let's go in there. We'll take a few bottles. But at the time, this one was built in 1823. It was built by a man named Marchot, who was the president of the Paris Chamber of Notaries. He actually lived around here. And so he decided to have this passage built. And of course, at the time, named after himself, as one does. And but it didn't last very long. It was only named after him for about 2 years. And then it changed over to Vivienne in 1826 when it was named after a family that owned quite a bit of the property around this whole entire area. So it's remained that since. It has that amazing tile work on the floor and has all this great light above. Hubert Robert, who's one of my favorite artists, had done some paintings of the Grand Gallery of the Louvre, of what he thought it should look like, because when the Grand Gallery was first built, it had no light above. It had no sunlights or glass. And he basically made this painting of what it should look like, and it is what it looks like now. But that also gave ideas to everybody else. So they added these lights, or the skylights above, so that everybody could enjoy it during the day, and you wouldn't be in the dark. And on each one up the top, you could kind of see there's a laurel wreath up there. On the side, there is on the left, it's the Mercury's emblem. That's also the sign of commerce. So wouldn't it be nice if all the shopping malls in America looked like this? Instead of these great big vast, but they have the allegories of the arts and architecture that are also there, which pretty much everything in Paris, just always make sure you're always looking up. Just have your head on a swivel. Just keep looking all around you, because you might miss something. But the tile floor is gorgeous. But 17 of these are left in Paris. Of course, they were once later on, when the Palais Royal kind of fell out of favor and people weren't going there, it kind of hit all of the passages. People weren't coming as much. At one point, they were the place to be seen. And so that's when they started adding some more stores to it. And now, of course, everybody loves to go see the passages. Right where we're walking right now, I stood for about a half an hour watching a guy. They were relaying all the cobblestones, and I think he probably thought I was crazy, because I just was watching him laying them out in that amazing arc pattern. It was really cool to watch. Of course, I took pictures. I asked him if it was okay, and then he didn't think I was as crazy. So, but now we are walking over to the Notre Dame de Victoire. It's a basilica in Paris. There's only, of course, the Basilique Sacre-Cœur and Saint Denis, but this is also a basilique. It was in Louis XIII actually laid the first stone here in 1629 and wanted it to be named after his victories over the Protestants in La Rochelle. What a great way to name a church over after a victory you had on another religious group. So that's great, Louis. But Louis XIII laid the first stone. It was a little bit smaller at the time. It lasted about 30 years, and then they started to actually make it much bigger. That's some beautiful light. I'm sure Carrie Park is taking some wonderful snaps of our walk. That building to the left that we saw for a second, that was actually owned by the Louis Dreyfus banking company. You'll know Louis Dreyfus by Julia Louis Dreyfus. So she comes from her history is actually really interesting. Oh, Carrie, you're so great. So this is the Basilique. Inside of it, it is known for all of its photos, which are the marble plaques that just cover the wall that people put blessings and prayers, leave them behind in the church. So it is known for that. Colette used to sometimes come here. Mozart actually came here as well, and Edith Piaf. Teresa de Lisieux, you're putting me on mute. The young saint that is a favorite of a lot of people. She actually came here to pray. Oh, there's St. Peter right there. But Pope Pius IX in 1853 named it, called it a basilica, because as a gift to the French for helping deliver Rome. So this church has a lot of political backings into it. Oh, there's Teresa right there. But you can see the plaques are just everywhere in this church, lining the walls. They're actually sometimes really interesting to read. Uh-oh. We might have lost them. It's the signal is interesting. We were just fine a couple weeks ago in Sacré-Cœur, but then you could go around the corner outside at Sacré-Cœur and lose everybody. And we're back. But inside the church are paintings by Charles-André Van Loo, who did a painting of Louis XIII during a siege of La Rochelle, and then 6 different frescoes. I love this church of how you walk around it underneath these little arches in the through each chapel. So each chapel is pretty small, and then you could just kind of keep walking through. You get some really great pictures standing and kind of catching the different edges of each of the rooms. I'll let everybody just kind of take it all in. More of the X photos. A lot of the statues where you see like the those circles with the painting or the reliefs of the men, a lot of those are because they donated that, and so of course, you know, they add themselves in. A lot of times you'll find that actually in stained glass, and also the paintings. One of the my favorites is the stained glass in Saint-Gervais, and has Garnier, that's famous for the opera, in it, because he helped donate money to the church. So they stuck his face into the stained glass. Yeah, Janet, this is kind of a hidden one. It's kind of off the beaten track a bit. It's a very, very pretty church. Some of the stained glass has been, some of it's pretty old. Some of it was done more in the end of the 19th century. It's in the facade, and a lot of it's in the Baroque style of the church. You can't ever go wrong with a good marble statue. Perfect for a Sunday. Saint Bernadette. Of course, the Pietà, which you'll find in almost every single church you could go into. A little bit different each time. Usually, a lot of the time, he's laying on her lap. But it's also like when you go into the churches, it's always great for the timing of the day. So you could really see the stained glass sometimes if the light hits it perfectly. We could just do if we had to hop around the city, we could almost just do a stained glass in the churches walk. We'd have to hop around a lot, but there's some really great ones. And the paintings, of course, all the paintings in the churches, some of them by very famous painters, Charles Lebrun, Delacroix, of course, that we saw in Saint-Sulpice. Everybody feel like you're there? Yes, Shay, it's the Notre Dame de Victoire. The Virgin Mary. So gorgeous. I love I never pass up going into a church in Paris. Anytime I come across one, I always have to go in. There's some amazing Sainte Clotilde over in the 7th is another amazing church. We'll have to go over towards there someday. They have some amazing stained glass inside of there. There's some really great, really beautiful churches, and the art, just the art alone, and the statues and everything. Even if you're not religious, you should definitely go. Make sure you go and check them out. They were the very first museums because of the art. So definitely go check them out. And even though sadly we can't go into Notre Dame for a few years, there's still a bunch of amazing, beautiful churches to go check out, many of which are quickly overlooked that not many people go find. So pretty. Always look up. I need to get some binoculars to bring in the future so I could. Sometimes the stained glasses will actually have the name of the saint on them, but a lot of times they don't. But some of them are pretty high up there to actually be able to see. Yeah, Ellen, it's sometimes maybe if you look up after a couple of glasses of wine, if you look up too far, you might fall over. Sacred Heart. There's definitely lots of people making it out to the churches. Some of the churches I think I mentioned last week, some of the churches will actually have little booklets that you could actually purchase. Sometimes when you walk in the door, always look around the door. Sometimes they actually just have pamphlets that are just free. You could take that sometimes have maps of the whole church, and it'll tell you which each chapel is. Some of them are really great, and they'll have descriptions of it, the paintings and pictures of the paintings and which chapel they are in and everything, which is really great. Some of them will just have basically just a map of the church. So you kind of have all different variations, but always kind of look around the doors if you really want to find some more information out about some of the churches. You know, like I said, not all of them have it, but some of them do. I have a file folder that I think I have for each of the ones I save everything. So it's great when we're doing these things. I just pull it out and look through the map and everything that I have and all the notes. Sometimes I can't read my own handwriting, but see, I love those shots right there. You get to see all of it. So now we're gonna head back outside, towards outside. It's not nearly as fancy as the Shell and Saint-Sulpice, but you know, it's still pretty great. Yeah, Michelle, I believe they are all Catholic churches so far. I think most of the ones in Paris are. There's always the I still haven't been inside the Russian church over near the Eiffel Tower. They have very strange hours that they're open. Some churches are open only on Sundays, some of the smaller ones. And now we'll head back outside. This is into the Place des Pettipa. It was named after the Augustine convent that was there. They were called the Little Fathers, so Pettipa. It was actually destroyed during the Revolution. And so at one point, all of the shops that surrounded it, there's the Louis Dreyfus building, all the shops that surrounded it were all selling Bibles and religious medals and jewelry. So now there's only one of them that actually still does that in this area. But it's just the great thing about Paris, you could just be, 2 streets off or 1 street off from a very busy street. And it's just this quiet little, sweet little place. There's restaurants. I've gone through here early in the morning on the weekend, and they'll have normally they would have lots of tables sitting outside and people having breakfast. And then we're going to head over to the Place des Victoires, which has our old friend Louis XIV standing in the center of it. 6 streets radiate off of this circle right here. The center is dedicated to Louis XIV and his victories. He's up on his horse. It was created in 1685 originally. It was a tribute to the king, and there was a large home and garden that was here. And of course they just, tore it down so they could create this, the original statue of Louis XIV. This is not the original. The original was by Martin Desjardins. He actually it was actually a large, statue that Louis XIV was standing in Roman garb. He was being crowned by victory. And around the base, there was a bunch of bas-reliefs like this one has, but there was quite a few that surrounded it. There was also the 4 captives, the 4 different slaves that were also around it. Those you could see the reliefs and the 4 captives. You can see them now in the Louvre in the Corps-Puget. They're pretty fantastic to see. You could also see Louis's foot. That's the only thing that is left. But you can see that all in the Corps-Puget. They also have the bas-reliefs there that have the different campaigns and victories that he was on. The captives is kind of is something that also used to surround the equestrian statue of Henry IV on the Pont Neuf. Each of the captives represent a different area that he conquered, but they also always look closely. They also represent different ages. So you'll have like a really young guy to a really old guy, and they all mean a little something different. From resignation, abatement, wrath, and hope. So the young guys usually always hope, but you can see them now in the Louvre, which is really great. I stayed last spring before last, just down the street from here. So I would walk through here early in the morning, sometimes as the sun was coming up, and the sun would come up, and basically you could see, it looks like he was going to take off. And if you've also seen that movie Paris, Je t'aime, the little story with Juliette Binoche, she is living around here. Her son had passed away somehow, and she runs out here, and I think she's talking to, if I remember right, she's talking to the statue. But during the revolution, he was melted down and to make cannons. And then they put up a wood pyramid there instead. And in 1802, a statue of General Desaix was replaced. He later, under Napoleon, he later was melted down, and he was actually used in creating the Henry IV on the Pont Neuf. But in 1822, the state decided that they were going to put one back up there for Louis XIV. There is an old thing of about how to read equestrian statues. It doesn't really come true to this. They say that if both of the horse's front hooves are up off the ground, it means he died in battle. Louis XIV did not die in battle, unless you want to call part of his life a battle. But that's not exactly how he died. We are walking to the right is the Banque de France. Inside of it, it might just look like your regular building from the outside, but it used to be called the Hotel de Toulouse. Inside of it, it's absolutely breathtaking. Again, another one of those patrimoine weekends. So hopefully by next September, we could all go, and I'd be happy to take everybody to all these places. The Hotel Toulouse was built for Louis XIV's son, Louis Alexandre de Bourbon, who was the Count of Toulouse. He was one of the children that Louis had with Madame de Montespan. And so hopefully you guys all listened to that podcast episode. That was a really, we had to really figure out a way to talk about some of the things that she did and not completely horrify and gross people out. But he was actually legitimized. The children that he had with Montespan, they were legitimized, and being legitimized comes with some perks. So you get this great big fantastic home. Inside of it there, he had his father's architects help him. They created this one hall, the Galerie Dorée, which is rivals the Hall of Mirrors. It's absolutely gorgeous. I posted about it on Instagram. I could definitely post some of the pictures in the Facebook group for the event today. I'll post some of the pictures of some of that stuff from the inside so you could see, but it's gorgeous inside. The ceilings are all painted. It's smaller than the Hall of Mirrors, of course, but it's not missing any of its gorgeousness. A lot of it was just, a lot of the stuff had been destroyed during the revolution. And then the state got it back. State purchased the property, and it's now the headquarters of the Banque of France. And supposedly there's millions and millions of dollars in gold bars underneath it. During Patreon, it was actually really interesting. You actually get to go through, you don't get to see those things, of course, but you do get to go see where they make some of the money, which, you know, you might think, okay, boring, but it is actually incredibly interesting to see the process that they do. And they're really great about having people there to show you. The Monet de Paris, which is on the left bank, right at the edge of the Seine, is something that you could go in and do tours every day of the year. That's another really fascinating place to go see. It never has people in there, sadly. You might think it's kind of boring, but it is actually really fascinating. They have all of these dies from the coins where they they made coins, special coins for the wedding of, Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette. So it's really fascinating. So over here on the left, the green building, or the green sidings. If anybody is a cook, you know of this place. It is one of the greatest places. If you are a cook in any way, you must go here. The Îleron is a cooking store. It's not just any cooking store. It's absolutely fantastic inside. It opened in 1820, so it's 200 years old now. Inside of it, sadly, we can't see. I'll post some pictures, though, on the event. Inside of it is just kind of an old creaky floors. There's every size of whisk you could ever want. There's just the copper pans to just like the most amazing copper pans, incredibly inexpensive compared to what we would find in the United States. But it was also Julia Child's favorite place to go and buy stuff when she lived in Paris. She would go in there and she would end up sitting there and having some wine with everybody. Mr. Bourdain, Anthony Bourdain, also shopped there. He had one of his episodes, he went in there and bought a duck press, which you would know from Tour d'Argent. Any cook any cook that's anybody has gone into that store, and you should definitely check it out. I did have to go there my very first trip. I bought a French rolling pin and I think like 2 whisks because I was looking for easy things that I could take home. To the left right here is the Au Pied du Cochon. It is another one, pretty old restaurant in Paris. It had, up until the COVID this year, it had the honor of being one of the only restaurants that was open 24 hours. But of course, when they had to lock things down, it got locked down. In the 18th century, this was called the Belly of Paris. Right around here is Les Halles. It's where all of the merchants sold their, fruits and vegetables and meat. They would be working, all night, all strange hours. Sometimes they needed something to eat that was filling, and that's where the first soupe à l'oignon, French onion soup, came up. At the time, it did not have the greatest part of it all, the bread with all of that melted, delicious cheese. Au Pied du Cochon was the one who actually added the cheese. It dates very far back. It also was where Francois Mitterrand held a celebration when he won. The first time I went there, I had to go there because I had to have my grandfather loved French onion soup and would mark it in all of his diaries. And so I had to go there. So I went there and I had French onion soup, and then I ordered the pied de cochon, which at the time the server was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Oh, oui, bien sûr, bien sûr." And then after they walked away, a few minutes later, I realized what I did, and I was ordering the pig's foot. And so when I just made sure to just drink a lot of wine and ask for it to keep coming, and I was horrified. I was raised in my parents at one point had a butcher shop. So, running around in the freezer with the sides of beef was something I did all the time. So I usually am not squeamish about these things, but it was literally an experience that I still have PTSD about. I did go back since then. I made sure to avoid the pig's foot. So inside, yes, Julia loved it too. Julia loved going in there too. So now we're in the gorgeous Sainte Eustache. This is one of the larger churches in Paris. It is actually smaller than Saint-Sulpice, which is always kind of surprising. I think it's because the ceilings are so high and there's so much light in this church. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's been going through some restoration the last few years. It also has housed a few of the larger events, with Notre Dame being closed. I was there for Easter. I was there a few days after Notre Dame fire. I went here for Easter. I am not Catholic. We were not raised going to church all the time, but it was an incredibly overwhelming, moving experience. The Archbishop of Paris and the other officials from Notre Dame were there. And when I saw them, I just started crying because I'd seen them in Notre Dame so many times. The firemen were there, the mayor was there, everybody was there for this Easter service. It was very incredible. This church is absolutely gorgeous. I love to take people here. If I have friends, I drag them in here to show them. You get some amazing pictures, of course. The ceilings are just huge. Saint Eustache was a martyred saint. He died in 118. He had a vision of an elk with a crucifix stuck in his antlers. And there's a longer story. He ended up trying to constantly, he was kind of constantly rejected by people. And one day he saw a gentleman that was poor, and he helped him, and it ended up being Jesus. And he ended up later becoming a saint, of course. If you go on the outside, on the north side of the church, it's kind of hard to see, but there is actually a elk head sculpture with the crucifix in his antlers. It took me a while to find it, so it's not the easiest thing to find. They do amazing organ receptions here for people. There's a lot of the art in the church. I think it's actually might be covered. But there's Keith Haring art in here. So there's a few things that are more contemporary. But they have been doing a lot of restoration on this church. It's a gorgeous church inside. They actually have a little audio guide that you could get near the entrance. There's a little glass room. You could actually get an audio guide there. But I love this church. Also in this church is Mr. Colbert, not Stephen Colbert, but Mr. Colbert, who did so much for Louis XIV and spent a lot of money. But the churches, the paintings are they really need to be clean. They're very, very dark. But you also have, is some Charles Lebrun here. Here's Colbert right here on the left. I can't help but think of Stephen Colbert every time I see Colbert. But that is Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Very close, of course, to Louis XIV. But in this church, they've had Mozart's mother was Mozart's mother. They had her service here at Sainte Eustache. There's been a million different people that have been baptized here that are all quite famous in history. It's because it's such a large church over in this area. It was very well attended. The Virgin Mary in the back was done by Mr. Pigalle, who also did the one that we saw at Sainte Eustache, or Saint Sulpice, I'm sorry, last week. There's always really gorgeous paintings, lots of stained glass. Usually there's a lot of people in here kind of quietly praying, so I try to be very respectful and not be in there snapping photos away and kind of just wait. But there's not many people there today. It's a gorgeous church. But inside this church, there is one chapel that is kind of my favorite, and it's kind of the last thing you would expect to see in a church. It is a chapel dedicated to charcuterie and pork, and we'll see it here in a minute. Oh, it's very, very modern there with their iPhone plug there. The gorgeous church. This is also one of my favorite views. It's from the back, looking in. If you could go there when they happen to be practicing the organ, or they have singers there. So if you just keep going past the door, the first chapel, let's see, the first or the second. I like our fearless leader. Oh, it is this one. So this is the chapel dedicated to basically meat. So at one point, the group of Leal, because it was the market, the division that actually oversaw the meat producers became there was a rumor that their meat wasn't always animals. We'll say, we'll keep it try not to ruin your breakfast. So as one of the gestures, they decided they needed to give back, so they gave a bunch of money to the church, and they had these stained glass windows made. If you could kind of see, there is actually a pig there on the bottom right. There is a butcher that's presenting some meat to Saint Antoine and giving it to them. So it's actually, there's the seal of Paris at the top. I have posted this on Instagram. I think I actually just did it not that long ago because it was the anniversary of, they actually do a whole procession. I believe it's in December, around the 16th or 17th, that they do at Sainte Eustache. I don't know if they did it this year. And then they bring meat and sliced meat for people. So, I mean, how great is that? But I do love that there is actually a chapel dedicated to sliced meat, basically. It was created in that the charcuterie chapel was created in 1954. So it's very, very new in the world of Paris for sure. And this is a Royale. That's now it's just kind of a great big shopping mall. But we're going to head straight over there. And I'm so excited that this is not covered up anymore and it isn't under construction. But you could kind of see in the middle of the picture, on the left, you could kind of see a pillar with what looks like kind of a little cage on top. That is the Colonne Medicis. And we have talked about Catherine. We did a podcast episode about her, so definitely go and check that out. Catherine de Medicis, was a incredibly interesting character. She, after Henry II had been killed, she wanted to create a palace. So she had the Tuileries Palace created by the Louvre. But then one day, because she really believed in she had a strong belief in astronomy and she was close friends with Nostradamus. Somebody had told her that she was going to die near Saint-Germain. And so at the time, she was, living in the Tuileries, which is very close to Saint-Germain-Auxerrois, the church. And so she kind of panicked and wanted to move. So she had a palace built over here, where the column is that we'll see. She had that built because she thought, okay, well now I'm away from Saint-Germain. And so on her deathbed, which was just about the anniversary, was about a week ago, her doctor came in and she asked his name, and his middle name, his name was Saint-Germain. So she ended up dying next to Saint-Germain. But she had lived over here. She built a palace that was over here in 1525. She had it built by Jean Boulon. Next to her, it was the Hotel du Lorrain. She after she fled the Tuileries, she was obsessed, as I said, with astronomy. She said Nostradamus was a close friend of hers for a long time when he kind of left. Another astrologist, Cosimo Ruggieri, which hopefully Giuseppe will tell me if I hopefully said that correctly. He was very close to her and would advise her on just about everything. And so she had this column built for him. And you could actually, at the time, he would walk up to the top. It was like an observation that you could see at the top where we'll see the cage. It was situated, so it was on all four corners of the compass. So it was very strategically placed. When they tore down the entire, her palace, they did leave that. So it's really cool. It's been covered up. Because this is the Bourse, which is what we're looking at here also, has been covered up as well because it's getting turned into a museum. It was built back in 1763 after, of course, the Queen's palace was destroyed. It was, at the time, it was a storage for grain, and it was also like the commodities where they would sell the grain to people. It ended up later becoming more of actually like their stock exchange. They had originally had an iron and copper roof on the dome, placed on the dome. That was to replace a wooden one that actually caught fire. In 1885, it became the stock exchange, but in 2016, the city of Paris leased it to billionaire Francois Pinault to house his contemporary art collection. It was supposed to open last spring, but now it is going to open just January 23rd. Oh, Carrie, can you screenshot that? I'm sure you already did, but I haven't seen it uncovered. I'm so excited. I love anything about Catherine and her sorceress ways. She wasn't as bad as Montespan. So if you haven't listened to that, definitely listen to the episode about Montespan. But be a little parental advisory on that one. But the inside, Pinault actually has a collection of over 5,000 pieces of modern art, and he wanted a place to house it. He also has a museum in Venice. And so inside here, you could actually go, I'll post on the Facebook event, I'll post the website to this. It was really cool the other day when I looked it up to see when it was opening. They actually have like a time-lapse video of how they created it. It's very open in the center. It also has a huge mural that's painted in the entire dome. It was done by 5 different painters in 1889. It's been fully restored. It represents different parts of the world. So they actually have Russia, Europe, Europe represents the arts and architecture. Africa is seen with a lion and a group on the hunt. Asian is shown with a hookah and an elephant. And then the north has polar bears, but it also represents America inside of it. So it's, I can't wait to get inside. Hopefully with COVID pushed off the Musée Carnavalet or Carnavalet, pushed off a bunch of different openings that we should have been able to see. So hopefully those are all open and ready to go when we come back. Look at that beautiful light. This is what I love about, actually, most people think, oh, it's get cold, but what's great about Paris in the winter is that there's no leaves on the trees. And while that's sometimes a little sad, you also get to see parts of architecture you don't normally get to see. So that's what I love about going in the winter. Also, you get these beautiful, incredibly beautiful sunny, clear days. And it's not, as long as that wind doesn't kick up, it's just bundle up, you're all good. But there, yeah, it's not, there's in Saint Eustache. There's some other really fun little treasures around there. There's a building inside that's partially remained inside that's in a courtyard that has this amazing staircase. There's some really fun, really neat things around that area. Leal itself now is just kind of a giant shopping mall. If you forget your card reader for your phone, that's a great place to go and pick one up, as I know, but kind of just it's kind of close to an American shopping mall. So what's going on out there?
Everyone's out today. It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's some little like children's battles going on.
Yeah, they're playing soccer.
Ah,
Yeah.
faut que je bouge. Ah, il attend le bruit.
Yeah, they're listening to the kids.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we got for you, Claudine.
Yes. That's where we end. Look, we did really good with an hour.
We killed it. Thank you for everyone who came. We love doing this.
Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully, we're trying to record these so we could send them to you, but because of Zoom and
You
I'm
can show me.
talking and she's the one filming,
This side, so.
so we're gonna keep
And
playing around at it, hoping that it works. So, but thank you guys ever so much for
on
joining.
the other side.
Just if he wants to show you guys. Here he is, your
I want
cameraman.
to see Giuseppe.
There's Giuseppe.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Merci. Your church. That's not your church. He's the Pope of Sacré-Cœur now.
He's the Pope of Montmartre.
Pope of Montmartre. So, but if in case you guys haven't had enough of us today, you could see us again at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to do a live stream about the different authors touched by Paris. So there's quite a few of them are American. But it'll be a fun little trivia. We'll have some trivia and some fun facts and stuff. So join us. You can find that also on our Facebook page. But I will post again in here afterwards the places we went and some photos. Give me some time because I have to go through about 9,000 million photos that I have. But I will share those so some of the things I talked about you could see a little bit better, like inside the Hotel de Toulouse. So thank you guys all so much for joining us. And then we will we'll see you next Sunday too, hopefully. Or next weekend, we'll say.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.